from Fox Sports, a friend of the show, Kyle McCarthy. Kyle, welcome again, my friend.
I'm glad to be here. Lots to talk about heading into the weekend.
Lots to talk about, but if I'm not mistaken, let's talk about something that's fresh from me anyway, from TFC and management, saying that they've picked up on waivers, if I'm not mistaken, Josh Williams. I don't know if you heard about that. Josh Williams picked up by TFC off of waivers. Your thoughts on that?
A good depth option for the Reds heading into the final stage of the season, capable of playing both right back and center back. A sort of capable MLS veteran who never really settled at NYCFC, but he's someone who could provide another option for Greg Banny heading into the final few months of the campaign.
Now, let's talk about the big game, New England Revolution taking on the injury-plagued Toronto FC. It doesn't look like Jovinko will be in the lineup. We know that Bradley probably won't be in the lineup. And to me, this will be a side that won't be probably not fully focused at the job at hand, but the Revs are, and they consider this a big, big test for them. Even though if Jovinko's not there and Bradley, they see how Toronto has soared up the standings. Talk about it.
Well, absolutely. For the Revs, they need to continue that forward progress they've started. They got 4 points in their past 2 games, and that's really pulled them out of their summer doldrums and really started to turn the ship around. And when you look at Toronto FC coming into Gillette Stadium tomorrow night, you've got a team that's missing Michael Bradley, that might be missing Sebastian Giovinco, and that had to suffer through a long travel day today to get down to Massachusetts. So for the Revs, they're looking at getting 3 points and sort of moving forward from there.
Now, are the Revs really looking at this game as a test for themselves moving into the playoffs, that this is the team that they possibly could face somewhere down the stretch, that they've got to make sure that they send a message to TFC, or do they realize in the back of their mind, yeah, let's gather the home win, but knowing that, Jovinko's not going to be there, Bradley's not going to be there, and let's just make sure that we're not getting too excited about the result?
I think the focus is more on the points available rather than sending any sort of message. If you're New England at this stage, you have to focus on really what you're putting out week after week. That's the key. And right now, the objective is to get another 3 points at home and then continue to march forward.
Pinedo on his way out of LA Galaxy waived. Donovan Ricketts on his way back to the LA Galaxy. I think this is a desperate move by the LA Galaxy in that position. I mean, Ricketts has had some better days behind him. Do you think that this could cost them a chance at winning another championship, especially knowing that Ricketts hasn't even been the starter? Tally Hall has been on top of his game with Orlando City.
I don't think the drop-off is enough to imperil the Galaxy's MLS Cup chances. It's certainly an interesting decision by LA Galaxy to waive Jaime Pinedo. But it's something that's been brewing for months now. Pinedo's been unhappy with his contract, and by cutting ties now, the Galaxy remove a potential distraction and pave the way to head down the closing stretch with Rickett. It's certainly an interesting move and one that bears watching over the next couple of weeks.
Let's talk about the All-Star break. What were some of the hot rumors that were coming out of there? What were some of the concerns that were coming out of there? And what were some of the things that you're going to see sooner than later implemented in the game in MLS?
I think a lot of the talk this week is focused on the All-Star format going forward. A lot of questions about whether this format with MLS versus the World will stay over the next few years. That's something that's going to bear watching, because there are certainly camps that would like to both protect what's ongoing right now and perhaps change things up. So that's something that's been on the front burner, and I think that's something that we'll continue to discuss as the weeks progress.
Let's talk about some of the rumors that have come out of the MLS All-Star break. Also, some of the concerns, Kyle. Have we heard anything about, the concerns with the Miami situation? How is Atlanta doing? What about Minnesota in that stadium situation?
I think a lot of the expansion stuff is still up in the air right now. You saw that Marcelo Claret has batted down the recent reports about a potentially slanted stadium deal toward the Marlins, about the site at Marlins Park. And I think right now, as Don Garber said on the Fox Sports 1 halftime show, it's about as far along as Miami has been in years, and that's a difficult thing. For Minnesota, again, it's an exercise in patience because they're not sure where they're going to put the stadium. St. Paul's in play, Minneapolis is in play, and there are a lot of things there. I had a chance to visit Atlanta during the Gold Cup, talk with Darren Eales and Arthur Blank and Carlos Bocanegra, and the focus there is then to get that stadium, not the stadium, the training field sorted. It looks like they're going to be able to place their facility in DeKalb County, and that's an important step forward for them as they're looking to get the expansion side ready for 2017.
Kyle, I've talked to you about this before. To me, again, this year, a major concern has to be the Chicago Fire, especially the way they have played throughout the season at the bottom in the conference, not getting Drogba, on and on. I mean, to me, this has got to be a concern. That is a big market, a big city, and really their fans have not been treated to some entertaining soccer at all, and no big names have made their way to Chicago in years. Is there concern in the MLS commissioner's office about Chicago and the way they're headed?
I don't think so. I think at this point, when you look at the Fire, it's a club that has its own stadium. They're ticking over. Are things at the highest point? No. But when you look at the team structurally, it's there. So the key is extracting the most out of the component parts. And Fire head coach Frank Yao did what he could to salvage the Drogba situation by pulling Gilberto off waivers. He's a guy who has had some success in MLS in the past, could be an important component going forward for them. But as you said, it hasn't been a good year for the Fire, and it remains to be seen whether they'll be able to turn it around in short order.
Kyle, the two Canadian cities, Montreal and Toronto, have really stepped up to the plate. Jovinko, by far, has been the best MLS player this season. Now the Montreal Impact, Joey Saputo puts his money where his mouth is and gets Didier Drogba, and the fans go absolutely ballistic at the airport, 1,000 at the press conference, on and on. I can safely say that I've never seen this in any other two cities in MLS of the arrival of two players like this, maybe aside from Beckham. How important are these Canadian cities for MLS and the commissioner, and especially these signings, the way it has really electrified the league?
They're vital, certainly. And I think people tend to forget that the Canadian cities play such a massive role in the future of MLS, but they do. Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver are large metropolitan areas with significant clubs. And you've seen that with the way they've gone into the transfer market. Toronto FC spending all that money. Montreal splurging on Didier Drogba this summer. And I think when you look at the future of MLS, it's a two-country model. You have the United States and all those clubs, but you also have Canada in Toronto FC, Montreal Impact, and Vancouver Whitecaps. And the fact that Didier Drogba is now with the Impact strengthens the Impact going forward, and that should be good for MLS as well.
Lastly, before we let you go, Kyle, we really appreciate your time. I want to get your thoughts on this. Again, today and yesterday, Dwayne Rollins of the Canadian Soccer News is reporting that 2017 spring, a kickoff of a new Canadian professional soccer league, coast to coast. I believe it will happen. I'm pretty sure it will happen. I think this is great for the country. I think it's important. How do you see this playing from your eyes over the border there in the US of A in regards to not just MLS but USL and NESL?
I think it's great that the Canadian Soccer Canadian Soccer Association and a select group of owners are willing to back such a league in 2017. I think it's an important step for Canadian soccer. I think it's great for the development of the Canadian player, which, as we've seen over the years in MLS and USL and NASL, isn't a priority for American-based leagues. So I think it's a great step and a great sign for Canadian soccer. And I think for the American leagues, they're just going to have to cope with it because Canada has to sort out its own business. And it's clear that they need more in terms of player development, in terms of first-team opportunities for Canadian players. And if the Canadians can get a strong league off the ground, and with that CFL backing, I think they will, then that's great, not only for Canada, but for United States and for soccer in North America.
Well said, Kyle McCarthy. I'm sure there's a lot of Canadians that when they see you next time up here will buy you a Tim Hortons coffee, give you some maple syrup, and they'll thank you by saying, well done, Kyle McCarthy A. Nice to have you on once again, Kyle. Really appreciate your thoughts and your comments on the game we love so much. Have a great weekend, my friend.
Yes, you too. Thanks for having me.
That is Kyle McCarthy of Fox Sports. Love having him on. He's such a class act and really knows his stuff inside out. And great comments about the Canadian League that he threw in there as well. If you missed